Okay, hopefully, this knows what it's doing. It'll probably take a sec for YouTube to like properly catch up, which is about the only thing. Some of the changes they've done, I don't necessarily like. But good morning, folks. Welcome to the March live stream. It's it's gonna be a thing. So, for some of you, I don't know how many of you in the Seattle area, especially those of us who are out here, we're on like a fairly strict lockdown as far as all the human malware, let's call it that. um, so I've been thankfully working from home the last 2 days. I was considered essential staff, and I technically still am. I have some really interesting documents that I have just in case I need to show them to like National Guard while I'm traveling to work. That's fun. But the the kind of the sad part is like I can't do things like go see any of my friends. At one point, I was supposed to have a friend over to work on a tank, and we can't do that because we're not allowed to leave our homes unless it's for like a doctor's appointment, the grocery store. That's it. Like, you basically aren't supposed to leave your house unless you're going. And for essential workers, they can go to work, of course. But so that's put quite the monkey wrench, so to speak, into my filming schedule, which sucks, but you know I'll figure stuff out. So thankfully we have the live stream, and I can hang out with you folks and feel slightly social because being locked down in your house is not that fun. But I've got like this. Whoop, there we go. I can operate a computer. I got like this guy to keep me company, and you know, my lady, of course, and might be something else we'll talk about in a little bit. But got stuff to keep me busy on top of the work. Zen Ginger, if you're buffering, you might need to reload. Which, you know, I should probably put that in chat. At least I hope not everybody's buffering. Put it that way. I've been having some fun with OBS this morning, and I'm hoping that it's working. In my preview, it says it is. So, hopefully, it is properly working. Anyway, he's grown, but that's actually an old picture. He's bigger than that now, Kay. So just as a heads up, like that's kind of an old picture. It's really hard right now to get him to sit still for a picture, because he's a pretty big boy. He basically goes from like the top of my shoulder, went from holding him, that is, close to about my like where my belly button is basically, and you know I'm almost 6 foot tall, so. Take that how you will, but he's a big old long boy. He's put on some good weight. He's nice and stout, but healthy weight. Like he gets lots of running and playtime, so he's not getting chubby. But he's a nice little stout boy, and he's got all the room in the world to run right now, which he quite loves doing. He's a herding dog. Anyway, let's talk some fish. So. Because of the quarantine, there's a lot of projects I wanted to do that require other people, and I can't do them. So, for example, I haven't been able to have my meeting with my developer friends for the online horticulture program because we can't get together in person, and we want to be together in person literally to whiteboard some stuff out. Also, we haven't seen each other in a while, and we think way faster in person than we do on like an IM client or something like that. So that's made that a little rough. Actually, speaking of, in chat, Douglas Lathrop, hello, sir. That is one of my developer friends who I'm supposed to meet with, but I can't, to talk about the online horticulture program. But thanks for showing up, Doug. I wouldn't expect it. You're more of a game guy. I wouldn't expect you here in a fish stream. So yeah, the quarantine has made it pretty rough. And like, it's not truly a quarantine. We have it's like a stay home, stay safe, I think is what they've kind of dubbed it. It's not a shelter in place like California has, which is much more strict. Shelter in place is like nigh martial law in the way that it works in Washington. But yeah, so we have a stay home order, and yeah, video conferencing works, yes, but we are more efficient in person. It's just the way that a couple of our brains work. If we sit in person, we figure out stuff way faster than we would in video conferencing, and a lot of it is because we can all visually see a whiteboard and do stuff like that. But that's not it. Also, we just like to kind of sit down to lunch together. We're those kind of guys. Like, we hang out. Most of my developer friends, we all play Magic together. So I actually have some. That's this. I'm that kind of nerd. Yeah. And it's like the only time I play the game is with that group of friends. So it's gotta be, usually our excuse to hang out is to, like, we'll schedule a thing to play Magic, and it's kind of just our excuse to hang out as a group. But yeah, it's one of those things because so hi Doug, hi Jess. Candy just got shelter in place. Ooh, that's rough. Hopefully yours isn't as strict as Washington's. When Washington goes to full shelter in place, it's really, really strict, which thankfully Governor Inslee has not done. He's done a lot of dumb things in the past, but he has not done that yet. But yeah, so a lot of it is like, we kind of are using some of this stuff as an excuse to get together. We know most of what we are already going to do. It's just a matter of us finding time to hammer out the last few details and begin trying to actually assemble code. So thankfully, because it's not really in-depth code, it's not super complex. We're not talking like an operating system or something crazy like that. It's probably something that can be done in a few days, as far as getting a base for us to, like, start monkeying with and make sure we did it right. So I know that, like, the delay from coronavirus seems really horrible, but trust me, it's not that bad. Really, this is and part of it is mostly that I need to focus a lot of my time on new job, because I'm doing a lot of spool up on stuff that is really, really important. It's really early technology, so it requires a lot of hands-on stuff and a lot of time. If the audio is kind of low, one sec. I'm trying not to blow my mic out by being too loud, but hopefully we'll get the mic slightly closer and it'll be a little better. But yeah, so I'm pretty sure, depending on how long it takes, because right now I think it's April 7th or April 14th is how the order. I think it's the 14th is what the order currently is. The stay home, stay safe, and I think after that, it won't take us long. I still think we're good on my, like, mental deadline, so to speak, like my intention of having something functioning and releasable in July. That gives us time to test, monkey with it some more. There's a few other solutions when it comes to hosting on the website side itself too that I'm still trying to figure out, and I've been trying to do that in the background while we can't get together. There's a few weird hooks that I have to deal with. So yeah, let's talk about, there's a couple questions I want to answer in chat, and then we'll kind of just roll. So we'll see. Like, the hope is that, and granted, if the stay-at-home measures as they are stay in place for a significantly long period of time, then yes, my developer friends and I will change our initial plan, and instead of meeting in person, we'll probably video conference and get stuff handled. It's just one of those things. Like, we're all professionals. We're all pretty good at what we do, but we're kind of using this a little bit as an excuse to hang out some, because we don't see each other very often. I haven't seen that group of friends since December? I think that's right as far as that whole group. So it's one of those things where like it's been several months since we have gotten together as a full group. So we're kind of using the lunch where we devs are going to plan, and then we'll go like after we're done doing our planning meeting, we'll go hang out with the rest of the group and play Magic because we haven't seen each other in 3 months. So there's that. And it's been a myriad of working. Like I've just been working so much. They got together recently, and I was like the odd man out. I didn't show up, so because I was working on the game. Which that being said, let's do a couple questions, and then I want to talk about the game real quick, just if you don't mind. So I had one question about Boos from New Mexico Aquatics. So any tips? Wow, I can read English. For a first Bucephalandra owner, it has died back to a rhizome. All right, little Bobby, my buddy. So this is really common. Boos is really, really finicky when it comes to being moved. Keep the rhizome. You'll be all right. Trust me. I've moved all sorts of Boos and had it go all the way down to the rhizome and been flustered out of my mind. And I've had pieces that were like this big, and every leaf has just melted off when I moved it, and it's very, very aggravating. So literally just leave it in place, give it time, make sure it's getting good light. Not too much light because it'll start accumulating dust or green spot algae, whichever you want to call it, on the leaves when they do start growing in. But give it a little time. Just make sure that it's roots are up in the water column. It's attached to something, so it's nice and stable in place, and it will slowly start growing its leaves back. And what you'll notice is that like instead of growing like a lot of times a Nubius will one new leaf. And one new leaf. When it loses all those leaves, you'll see kind of a lot of leaves all come back at the same time in Boos. It's really, really common, especially the brownie, brownie subspecies of Boos does that a lot. I've had that happen to both my brownie blue and my brownie brown several times where they've just like got pissed, decided to melt all their leaves away, and then grew them all back at the same time. So don't stress too much. Just give it time and patience. It is a slow plant. A little bit of CO2 goes a long way with Boos, but it's not required. So don't fret too much. Just make sure that it's on rock or wood or whatever it is, so that the roots are up in the water column and can feed easily, and it gets a little bit of light. It doesn't have to be super bright, but don't have it too dim. You'll get your leaves back. It'll be all right. Okay, so then I want to answer Chevy Fish's question, and then I'm going to talk about the something a little special for a coronavirus, if you will, the human malware. So Chevy asked if there's anything you can do at home to prepare for the horticulture program. So normally I would not want to encourage people to like prep things to like submit a ton of stuff right at the bat. But if you are planting something new into your fish tanks or what have you, make sure that what you're doing is taking pictures. So for the program, you will have to have a picture of the initial planting and then propagations. The first one, so doubling, it has to be a minimum of 5 stems. I think it might be 4. Because some of the rarer plants, it's really hard to get 5 stems of them without paying an arm and a leg. And I might make some exceptions long term for some of the people that try to aggressively go after the rarer or harder plants when it comes to stems. Now, like, of course, a Java fern or something like that, it's just a single rhizome, at least an inch, right? Nothing too crazy, nothing too hard. So what we want to do is have pictures of the initial planting, and then if you happen to propagate, which you probably will if it's a stem in this period of time, you have to have at least double the number. So they have to, if your stems were, let's say 6 inches tall, and you cut them down to 3, right? And you propagated them, so now you have 10 stems. I need to see 10 of them 6 inches tall again. And they need to be easily identifiable as that plant. So if you tell me I grew Pogostemon octopus, I need to be able to look at that picture and go, yep, that's definitely Pogostemon octopus. Because if it looks at like some other plant, it will get rejected. So you can do a little bit to prep ahead of time. If you have a plant that you've been growing for a while and you get a flower out of it, take a picture of the flower and just hang on to that. Okay? Um, Try to have a date on it. That's my other advice. I would really like people to date things. So don't like show me a picture of a plant with a flower from like 2013. I want one from this year. This year. That if for those who have been really interested in the program, if you have pictures and you kind of prep it for when the program launches, as long as you have something like a little handwritten piece of paper you're just holding in the frame, right, and it just says like, come on, it's this date, or it's time stamped in your camera, whatever it may be, as long as it is obvious that it happened in 2020, you will get credit. Okay. So you can prep a little bit. Don't prep too much. I'm only going to accept so many entries of people pre-program starting. But, like example, you have an Anubias that flowered, Zen Ginger. Take a picture of that bad boy. Make sure that you got a date somewhere in there. Like a little piece of paper, handwritten is perfect. Just so that I know it's 2020. Hang on to that picture. Once the program launches, go find your Anubias entry. Put the picture of the flower in there. You'll get credit for the flower. Okay? I don't want to punish people too hard and be like, nope, you have to wait till the program comes out. Like, as long as you did this year, it's fine. And yeah, if you can timestamp it from your phone, that's probably the best way to do it. Most phones allow you to do that. Candy, thank you very much. It's been a long morning. But yeah, most phones will let you do that. So just timestamp it and you'll be fine. Okay. So we have a couple more questions that I will answer. And yeah, volume might change a little bit just because I'm moving away from this mic and it's not a, how to put this? It's not a shotgun mic. So if I get this far away, it's going to be different than if I'm up close like this. I'm just trying not to bend over too much because it hurts. So let me answer that, Duke. Just the eventual website requirements are probably going to have some strict requirements on picture size, but you can reduce that later. So if you take whatever the full size that your phone or camera makes, and then you can reduce it down later by changing the size of the picture, it's like the data size is what's going to matter. And it's probably going to be something like no more than 5 megabytes or something. I'm not sure what the requirements are going to be. It depends on the hosting service, so I have to figure that out. That's one of the things I'm working on. But yeah, just try to do your stuff. Make sure it's time stamped. Your phone can auto do it for you, so let that happen. Should make it easy for you guys. Allow you to at least, like, if you've done some stuff this year, to get credit for it and not have to like redo, especially if it's some of the hard stuff like flowering certain plants. That can be a little tough. Okay, so I have one more question I want to answer, and then I'm gonna do a little PSA if you don't mind. From John Wood, Bentley, why does moss and floating plants die slowly? Why every other plant are fine and some are flowering? So my guess on the moss, it's two different reasons, usually. Floating plants don't do well if there is a lot of flow or there's not enough nitrates. They're extremely nitrate hungry. And some plants that can be flowering can deal with very low nitrates and do well. But a lot of times what you'll tend to see is that like really healthy floating plants will nitrate starve stems. Sometimes it happens the other way around. Some of the more durable plants can be pulling just enough nitrates out of the water, and if the floating plants like coat the entire surface, they can be competing with each other too much and start dying off. Also, if it is too humid, so if you have a lid, right, and you keep your water level really close to the top of your lid, and it's too humid, that will cause a lot of death in your floating plants. They like a certain kind of distance away from the lid so it stays a little drier and they're not getting too wet on the top of their leaves. When they're getting too wet on the top of their leaves over and over and over again, It can cause problems for their long-term growth and can cause them to kind of die off. Like some will sustain, they'll be okay. You're not going to lose them all, but you'll see that you struggle to get good growth. Is really what it comes down to, especially with like dwarf water lettuce. Dwarf water lettuce does that quite a lot. Now, moss. Usually, when I've had moss struggle, it's for one of a couple reasons. It's getting too much light, and there's algae growing inside the moss, causing the moss to get basically shaded out to death, and the algae absorbing all the light. Or if you have lower light, which is usually most mosses do better in slightly lower light and not super high light, there's not enough flow. So when moss is especially has this problem where it collects a lot of detritus, right? And if we don't have a reasonable amount of water flow kind of coming over it and keeping it clean, or shrimp in a tank that can have shrimp, that detritus builds up and basically can poison is not the right word, but that's the word I'm gonna use. Can basically ruin the ability for those to continue growing and be healthy. So address one of those two issues. It depends on how it's dying off. You really have to look, like, is it turning brown? It's probably having issues with detritus. Is it like just dying back and there's masses of algae? Well, it's algae, right? These are the most common things that I've seen with moss. I don't do a lot of moss on purpose. I don't like moss that much. I love the way it looks in aquascapes. I hate the amount of maintenance it takes. When I grow moss, I try to grow only moss in a tank. And I'll usually do it with shrimp. Because the shrimp keep it clean, it's less places for them to hide, it's great for baby shrimp, etc., etc. Okay. I hope that will help you out. It's moss can be tricky. I am not the best moss person. I'm going to fully admit that. There are better people at moss out there, but eventually I'll start working on moss and I'll become your next moss expert. One of these days I'll get where I'm out of other plants to grow and I have to grow moss in my own horticulture program for my club, and then yeah, I'll be doing a lot of moss. And moss also can be really good for like basically spawning mops, like live spawning mops. That's where moss is really good and where I like it, and where I would like to use more of it. Which Friday Fish Facts is talking about using moss for fry. It's really good because a lot of fry can hide in moss when they're young. Yeah, it's great for that stuff. I've had some how can I say this, experiences with moss that have made me just regret it. Slowly turning brown. Okay, so yeah, most likely you're dealing with a little bit of detritus getting in there, and it's not. So I would look at flow and making sure that it's getting its nutrients, so that you're just liquid fertilizer in the water column is going to be the best solution. Same with floating plants. Liquid fertilizer in the water column and all in one is perfect. If you need to dose just specifically certain things, you can, but I would just keep using an all in one. It's simple, it's easy, it's brain dead. It's I don't think it's necessary to do the crazy EI dosing that a lot of people do. I honestly feel like you could just keep dosing an all-in-one and not care. However, it's so much cheaper to do like EI dosing and powdered ferts and all that kind of stuff. I fully understand that. And we'll talk about that here soon, actually, in that I plan to do a Plants for Profit video on fertilizer. So look forward to that. That's one of the things that I'm doing because my normal schedule has gotten horrifically ruined by human malware. Stupid human malware. One thing I want to talk about real fast, kind of a PSA. For those who have fallen on some hard times during human malware, maybe you are temporarily furloughed or laid off. You got kids at home that are forced to not go to school, and you're not really sure how to entertain them. The game I worked on, which is Bots and the Robo Friends, the company that made it, Game Grotto Softworks, is doing a small giveaway as just kind of a appreciation for folks who are dealing with this kind of hard time, and globally speaking. So if you go check out the Game Grotto Softworks Twitter or their Instagram, which if you look at my Instagram, I've linked to them a couple times in some posts. You can also look. I put up a post on Facebook about it too. For those who watch Facebook, I very rarely post on Facebook, but when I do, usually it's something important. They're gonna give away 100 total copies of the game to folks in need. So if you've got kids that are home from school and you're having trouble entertaining them, Bots is actually a really good game for playing with your kids. It's designed for basically parents and kids to play together. But it's still pretty fun. Like we've played it as a group of adults that had a blast. So when we were testing it before it launched. So for those out there, if you're dealing with some kind of hardship, they have kind of a tell us your story and we'll give you a free copy of the game going on. I think they still have like 60 or 50 copies to give away. They've given away a good number so far, but they're giving away a lot of copies. And the only thing that I would ask is if you do take advantage of that, like please just leave them a review on Steam and be honest. You don't have to like fluff it up. Just leave them an honest review of your opinion of the game. Like play it. Hopefully you enjoy it. We worked very, very hard on it, but it's one of those things where they're just trying to do something a little nice when a lot of people are dealing with a lot of not fun, trying to do some nice for some folks, and hopefully spread the word on the game a little bit. That'd be nice too. Man, Candy, you're too good at this. So yeah, they're giving away copies of the game for those interested. If you're not a gamer, cool. Maybe you've got a friend or a niece, a nephew. They can qualify too. It doesn't have to be you. Just, maybe mention that I sent you their way. Whatever. That's my little PSA for those dealing with human malware. Opportunity to maybe play a video game for free. Okay. So, I'm going to get a couple of questions that came from the community tab post for the stream, and then we'll go back to questions in live chat. This is my usual deal. So, first, from Adam Johnson, who actually is in chat, which is kind of great. So he wanted to know my thoughts on flow rates, power heads, filtration setups, livestock, and plant preferences for flow. So, and it can't seem to find any comprehensive sources on this, which I can understand that. A lot of the... How do I put this? Most of the plants that we deal with in aquatics and planted tanks, you don't want too much flow. Excuse me a moment. I'm going to deal with my... I do like rush through breakfast, and every once in a while when I do that, it makes me drip a little bit. Hot food does that to me. Anyway, sorry. So, my thoughts on flow rates, power heads. So the more that I've used power heads, the more that I hate them. So let me explain why. Power heads tend to leave a lot of potential for fish to get hurt, for plants to get sucked in, and to cause all sorts of equipment failure issues. It sucks, but plants that do very well in flow, there's a lot of them. So Boosts, Piptospatha, and Crips all come from stream systems. They're used to high water flow. They're also used to a water level like going from this point one day to this the next. They come from really extreme weather systems where the water can change literally 3 foot in a day, up or down. So they're pretty durable long term, and they deal with flow very, very well. Most of your Ludwigias are actually reasonably good in flow. Hygrophilas tend to do okay in flow. Anubias, of course, some Java fern, they come from systems where they grip onto rock and they deal with flow all the time. Moss does not do very well in high flow. It likes low flow. It just likes like a gentle flow over the top of itself. But if you get to like high flow, it's not a very, very happy camper. What else can we look at? So like a lot of your epiphyte plants, Bulbitis does great in flow. You could also use like, I don't know how I forgot this, but like any of the Valsnera, especially Jungle Val and Italian Val, can do fine. Like they just don't care about flow. They just will peel over and be fine. As far as like livestock, you can look at like the river system style. So like your trying to think like a lot of your loaches actually are used to flow. Plecos are used to tons of flow. Corridoras are used to tons of flow. A lot of your tetras and stuff actually do fairly well in flow. Certain rainbows, the river rainbows, they live in fast moving water and don't care. They're very good fish at dealing with flow. You have to avoid some of the lake rainbows. It's like your Bozeman eyes, your turquoise, your Wanamensis. Those are all lake rainbows, but a lot of the Australian rainbows, Running River, for example, a lot of like Rubro striata, stuff like that, they're all from stream and river systems, so they're used to flow in general, so they do very well. A lot of the dwarf rainbows, so like McCullochai, dwarf neon rainbow, stuff like that, they do very well in flow. So those are some of your options. You can also look at like Rachel O'Leary has in her book and has talked about it, like the stream system or river system fish, where you're looking at like reticulated hill streams, like the hill stream setup. Reticulated hill stream loaches. White clouds actually come from fairly fast moving water originally. It's only through aquaculture that they've gotten used to slow water, but they come from quick water to begin with. So there's a ton of fish out there. Like really, it's just a matter of look up any fish you want from a river system and then see if they do okay with plants, and then start choosing plants that are naturally better at surviving in a river or stream setup. Like I said, Crypts, Anubias, all your epiphytes are pretty good, and then Crypts just naturally are used to that kind of flow. Val can do very, very well. There are some Rotalas can also do well. Some of them, the like Willicki Eye, so like the really fine kind of feather duster Rotalas, they actually do really, really well in flow because they'll just bend over and not care. Because they don't have big leaves, they have those little spiny leaves. They do very, very well in flow, but like Pogastamons do not do very well in a lot of flow. Octopus is maybe the only example that can take some flow, but not too much. So hopefully, Adam, if you're still in chat, that covers your question. If not, you'll catch me on the replay, and I know you'll have your question answered. Okay, we're gonna do one question out of chat, and then we'll get another one on the community tab. I just want to make sure I didn't miss one of the previous ones. So yeah, Shelly asked about my email address, which that got shared. Just want to check to make sure I'm not missing a question. Thirsty Rabbit did mention that like his brother and kids caught a bunch of 15 wild Australian rainbows. So that's pretty sweet. Get a lot of gold and blue. One thing I would say is like try to make sure you know the catch location. Keep the catch location. That's very, very important. There's a lot of stuff that's not as common when it comes to the States, at least, in the hobby, and catch locations matter a ton. Just keep looking. Okay, so good. So from Ken B, he's asking, he's treating his Shabunkin for ick in an outdoor tub. Ick X, is it normal for their slime coat to turn slightly cloudy during treatment? I'm trying to think. I would be worried you're dealing with some kind of like pH issue if you're seeing a cloudy slime coat. So normally when we see milky or cloudy or white showing up in the slime coat, most commonly starts over the eyes. So it look like you got a white, like a cataract in the center of the eye. That tends to be some kind of pH issue where it's too hard or crashing, one of the two. I would assume because you're talking about a Shabunkin, you've probably buffered the water a little bit because they like some hardness in their water, but not a ton. So I would test your pH first. Make sure your pH hasn't crashed, because if it's getting too acidic, that's really common. It kind of burns the slime coat and it causes that milky appearance. Or cloudy, however you want to describe it. Otherwise, like I would ask, because I'm going to be full with you. I am not a huge know-it-all when it comes to goldfish. I don't keep them very often. They're just kind of not my jam. I appreciate koi, but I don't know I don't know enough on them. So, like for Shibunkins, I would maybe try to talk to the aquarium co-op people, um, or look at someone like Mr. Brown's Goldies, for example, is really really good source. You're talking about there's a lot of good goldfish gurus kind of out there. I would ask them, frankly, because they're going to have much more experience than I do. I would say that I don't think slime coat having any kind of cloudiness to it is normal with Ikex. However, don't be afraid to use like Melifix or even just like Hikari Ultimate or one of those. Okay, so yeah, it can almost guarantee that the pH is what's causing that cloudiness or milkiness to the slime coat, because that's pretty low for a goldfish. So basically what it is like when it starts getting slightly acidic, certain fish, rainbows are a great example. This is the most common. Rainbows you'll get like a white dot over the eyes. If you see that in a bunch of your rainbows, that's usually an indication that your pH has crashed. And it's almost guaranteed it's the same thing you're dealing with here with the goldfish. So you might want to like get some crushed coral or something to buffer the water up inside the tub, just to keep it up into those like what 7.2, 7.4 kind of range. So yeah, my guess is it has nothing to do with the Ikex. It's all about the pH, and pH can crash when you add chemicals sometimes. So just be prepared. Make some small adjustments. You should be fine. Hopefully we solve that. Ken, if you need to, like, feel free to shoot me an email. Just if you let me know how things turn out. I'd really like to know, just because if it is the pH, that makes me feel better that I actually knew the answer, because I'm not a big goldfish guy as far as experience and knowledge. But I'd love to know if everything's going all right. Oh, Ginger Graves, thanks for becoming a member. Sid McGill, welcome. You got the sweet Anubius art as a new member. Which, by the way, now you have access to all the sweet emotes. For members, you get like fun emote thingies, which don't work all that well. I'm trying to like post the ones I have, and it's going so slow on my end. It is crazy. The chat is just like, no, I don't wanna. Oh man, that is so slow. These are the current 4 emotes. They're also member badges. Just we'll have some new ones. I'm gonna get some custom ones done, but that's kind of as we get to certain membership thresholds. I'm gonna let the members vote on what the next ones are gonna be. So we'll probably have one for Bob, which Bob's doing okay, just as a heads up. And we'll probably have one for some of the others. We'll probably have one for Papalymo. I think that's a necessity, because Sweet Boy needs something. But as we get further along, and as more members, like I think it's like 10 is the next major threshold for a bunch of emotes or something like that. I'm gonna let the members vote. They get to choose, because they're the ones doing it. So just a heads up, just in case you're thinking about it. But yeah, thanks, Ginger. It's good to see you. So Thomas Chiarella, I hope I got that right. Why would Italian Val stay short? Like 8 inches long. When you got it, it was 18 inches. Oh, that's some long Val. So a couple reasons. The first could be it doesn't have as rich a nutrient load as it did when you got it. So it might have been grown somewhere where there's like really heavy nutrient load, so it can just feed and feed and feed and feed and feed all day and grow like crazy. Also, Vals get longer in lower light. So if you have significantly brighter light than the tank it came from, it can stay shorter and bush out more. It doesn't have to grow as long to reach for all that light. Because when Val gets really long, a lot of times what it'll do is reach and try and scan across the top of your tank, because it's trying to get and absorb more and more light. If you have fairly bright light, it doesn't have to do that as fast. So that's a couple of the reasons. Other than that, like, I mean, unless you chopped it. If you cut it, I hope you didn't cut it, because then it'll never grow anymore. But well, those leaves won't grow anymore. New ones will have to grow up. But yeah. And thanks, Ron. This Friday Fish Facts. Congrats on the 6K. Just barely hit it like last night, apparently, in like 2 in the morning or something like that. So, well, I guess that's this morning, but whatever. It's been a slow grind, man. But yeah, 6K is kind of cool. 10K will be do something real fun. If we hit 10K on the channel, we'll do something real fun. I'll give away something crazy or something. I'll give away like a Fluval light or some nonsense. Yeah, you heard it here. I'm an insane person. So yeah, I'm gonna do one more question from the community tab while folks can add some extra questions in chat. Don't forget, like, if you do at Bentley Pasco, it makes it a lot easier for me to see the questions that you have. We'll cover some questions, and then we might talk another little project thing here shortly. If there are no questions, we'll see. So from Sean, the Shelley superfan. He never fails to give me a question about Shelleys. Everyone. So it's a follow-up to the previous live stream. I had mentioned in the previous live stream that I had been debating selling my current colony of Neolamprologus multifasciatus, multis. So they're probably the most common shell dweller. We'd had a lot of people locally who'd been looking for Shelleys, and I kind of want to change the entire way that I keep Shelleys, which is to say I want a different tank than a 40 breeder, and I kind of want a like pseudo paludarium setup, not necessarily specifically a paludarium, but I'm thinking like a 50 or 60 low boy, maybe even like an 80 low boy, or like an acrylic frag tank or something like that, and having it short, right? So it's only maybe 12 inches instead of 17 or 18, and then having a big rock structure in the center that comes out of the water and has epiphyte plants on top that have their roots digging into the water, so they're getting all of that nutrient load and helping deal with nitrates, and then having around the rock structure all the shells for the Shelleys to live, and trying probably a different Shelley, which is something that I talked about. I hadn't really decided which one. I'm kind of looking at a lot, like gold ocellatus are really cool, blue ocellatus are really cool. There's those ones that Jimmy got, Swisky for those who watch Jimmy's channel, that are really neat looking. But I just want to try something a little different than multis, I think. And have I decided? I've decided that yes, my intention is to sell my current colony to somebody who really wants them. Basically let them take everything inside of the tank. So if they want the sand, they want my PVC, all that kind of stuff, I'm going to go back to shells when I redo them. And once I can do my garage, which I can do it faster with the new job than I thought I was going to be able to, but probably not anytime super soon. I got other stuff that's more important to get done, right? Online horticulture program, dealing with human malware. Stupid coronavirus, man. It is, and it sucks for people. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to make light of people losing their lives or getting horrifically sick. Not at all. But what I laugh at is the level of panic that people are doing over like toilet paper, rice. It's like, guys, if you just bought your normal amounts, it'd still be at the store the whole time. We'd all be okay. It's just about washing your hands more, using sanitizer, not like getting in crowds of hundreds of people and touching everyone you've ever never met before, and just, taking some safety precautions. It'll be okay. That's the stuff that I kind of laugh at, because it's a little too crazy. Like I had to take, let me give you an example. I had to take my lady to a medical appointment yesterday, and the visitors, so me, I am not allowed to sit in the lobby of the medical office and wait for her appointment, or join her on her appointment if she wanted me to. I had to be sent out basically to stand outside and wait. And there was no one there. We were there at 8 a.m. for an appointment. There were 2 other people total that had appointments at that time, in that time window, and each person came with some. So there's three guys standing outside. We're all like roughly 6-7 foot apart, and we're all laughing kind of at like what we deem a little over paranoia, because in the lobby was huge. This place, the lobby was like the size of the bottom floor of my house practically, and it could have sat. We could have all sat in there and been plenty far apart. And by the time that the first two appointments, so my lady and this other guy, got done, only one other person was starting to show up as we were leaving. We could have socially distanced in comfort, but they wouldn't let us. And it was one of those things where it's like, okay, that's a little, because like now we have to stand outside, and you're at a higher risk when people are standing instead of like forced in chairs to break social distancing. And the area, when they have you check in, like when you first walk in, they take your temperature and they ask you, like, have you had a cough? Have any trouble breathing? You been anywhere? Like, no, and no. Like, okay. So they're pre-screening you, right? The nurses are standing side by side the whole time. We have to practice social distancing. The medical professionals are not practicing social distancing. Those are the parts of this whole thing that I laugh at, because it's not all irony, but it's pretty funny. Now the horrible part is, like, lots of people are getting horrifically sick, and especially if you have older relatives, you got a lot of people being really stupid. Like, we had people going to Alki Beach, which is a nice beach in the Seattle area, last weekend, and they had like hundreds of people literally going out to the beach when the governor was like, please stay home, stay the hell away from people. And there's like a little park that's nearby one of my coworkers. He can literally like see it from his apartment, and there are groups of parents all sitting together while their kids played at the playground, not social distancing at all, right? These are the things where it's like, this is why they keep making stricter and stricter orders, is because people are being dumb. So hopefully people will finally start being smart, and we can tackle this thing, because it's tackleable. It's not, this ain't the Black Plague. This isn't a feudal era, right? We have a pretty good medical system. I mean, it's really expensive, but we have a very good medical system in the United States. And like the UK has a very good one. Canada has a very good one. Most of the people who watch me, so that's all of you basically, and like the 3 Australian and New Zealanders, you've all got good medical systems too. But yeah, it drives me crazy, because some of the things that I would like to do that I could do safely and smartly, like a fish room tour, or working to set a tank up with someone else who I know basically stays at home all the time anyway, and is not going to be sick. I can't do that. Yeah, it sucks. But it does allow me to spend time with a dog, spend time with my lady, and work on a couple projects. I've been playing with some stuff, and you'll see videos coming up for a lot of the stuff that I'm messing with. I'm trying to get, how to put this, I'm trying not to jam like too many of the same kind of video, like too much product reviews all together, because I want some variety, otherwise people might get bored. But I've been playing with a lot of products lately, because that's what I get to do in my free time, beyond like dealing with plants. So to answer this question in the longest way possible, it's been sitting up there the whole time. I am going to eventually, when I can go meet a person and have them come pick up my Shelleys, I will be selling my Shelley colony off to somebody. There's been a couple locals who really, really wanted multis. And then eventually I will build a much cooler tank, in my head at least, with a different shell dweller. So I plan to have one shell dweller tank kind of forever whenever I can do my garage. Just because I like Shelleys. I think they're really cool fish. Just like I want to eventually have one saltwater tank. But that's it. Like, for the most part, it'll be a lot of rainbows and some guppies and some plecos and some plants. Lots and lots of plants. That's my jam. Rainbows and plants are my jam. My blue guppies are my jam. Certain plecos are my jam. And yeah, for those who are wondering, new job does make it possible to do zebras again. But yeah, no, I will eventually have zebra plecos again because I'm not giving up on that dream, man. I love those fish too much. So, oh man, Ginger, you bring up something good. That's one of the other things that I've really hated. So like a bunch of the fish stores in my area have closed, just for safety purposes, and some of them do like curbside pickup, but I haven't been able to get frozen food. I thankfully the last time I went and bought frozen food, I think I bought like $300 worth of frozen fish food in one shot, because I was like, I don't want to. I don't want to go out too much. I'm just going to buy a lot and fill up my little side freezer. So I have plenty of it. I'm just getting through it. And I know that like certain foods I'm running low on and or are nearly out. Whereas others I have plenty of. So like I have lots of bloodworms. But I'm running low on Daphnia, for example, in my frozen stuff. Or Cyclops. Cyclops has been really hard to find lately, which is kind of annoying. And the drive to the co-op is a little long, so usually I don't get frozen food from the co-op because it gets kind of melty on the drive home. But yeah, so there's some that are open, and a lot of them are open. The biggest problem is that most of them are open hours that I was at work. So now that I work from home, it's a little easier. I can take a trip down to like my local. There's a little local shop that's like 5 minutes from me where I normally buy frozen food, just because it's close. But normally they changed their hours kind of early in the coronavirus thing, and they were open 10 to 6, 9 to 6. And it's like, I'm at work that entire time. I'm not home. I can't go and buy anything. Okay. So a couple questions in the chat. There was first David Reed asking, have I spent some time breeding those earwares? So no, part of that is I need to make tank space to have room for babies, which is something I'm working on. That's so like part of the Shelleys leaving temporarily until I can do my garage and have like a big fish room is to make space for baby raising tanks. That's the other reason I'm justifying it in my head, is that it gives me an entire rack row that's taken up by a 40 breeder to now be probably a couple. I think I can do like 2 10s and a 20, or 2 20s and 2 10s. I can't remember what I can fit in there. And then that makes it a lot easier to like raise baby fish, or maybe just do two 20 longs and divide them somehow. So a lot of it is space. I have a big space issue in my house is generally what it comes down to, because I can only run so much power. And with rainbows, it takes a lot of work. Now that I'm working from home, I actually can do more because I can more actively hatch live baby brine. Where previously, like, I was getting up at 4:30 in the morning to get going to work and then getting home late. So I didn't have a lot of time at home to prepare plenty of baby brine shrimp throughout the day. So yeah, now I can do that I'm working from home. I've only been working from home for like a day and a half, so I'll probably start making some adjustments around my house starting next week, and I'll probably drop a mop in a couple tanks to see where I can get eggs reliably again. I'm dealing with some algae issues in the Bozeman tank, and that's made it. It's made it hard. Go LR Bretts for some tanks. No, I don't ever want to be like Lucas. Among many reasons that like my lady might murder me if I put that many fish tanks in my house, I don't want the power bill with that many fish tanks in my house. But I have a pretty big garage, so when I can do my garage, which might be later this year, like September, October, when I can start getting work done there. There's a few things that have to get done first, which I'm trying to get done now. Although, again, coronavirus has really ruined half of those plans. So I kind of want, like, I have a 540 square foot garage, so I kind of want everything in one spot. I want it in one space, nice auto water change system. Um, oh, you mean no? Okay, I thought you meant like just the crazy number of tanks that Lucas keeps. It's like, oh god, I don't want that. I don't want to go that crazy. So I don't like no filter, and eventually, when you heat your entire house, you don't need a heater. So yeah. So like when I have the fish room, it'll be heated, and then I don't need to worry about having heaters in tanks. So that brings down a lot of power requirements. There's several things, like basically I want to be able to do it what I deem right, and when I get to do that soon, uh, yeah. So soon, which means like toward the end of this year. Um, don't worry, it'll be cool. It'll be worth it. But I want to get the online horticulture program done first, and deal with human malware first. Because once that's all out of line, then I can do things like get a contractor in, or whatever it takes to like build out my garage. Because my garage is very much not a finished garage. It's not insulated. It it doesn't have drains in the floor. I need to do plumbing work. I need electrical work. There's a bunch of stuff to get it ready and do it the way that I want it. So the other part of that is like making it very filmable. So an example would be like if you guys watch Tozawa Tank, so Zenzo Tozawa, he recently did a major change to his fish room, which was like something in the back of my head is like the secret sauce that like he did, and now I've got beat to the punch. But basically putting in sound deadening and having the walls all for the most part kind of black to help make it easier to film inside your fish room, so that it's not super noisy, so that there's not like light reflecting off white walls all over the place. It makes it much easier to film. There's also some other like some cheater things that I've talked to a friend about, and I won't talk about those here because I want them to be a surprise, but it's going to make filming fish in my eventual fish room really awesome. Sean. Poor Sean never got notified. Yeah, I just answered your question in like two parts because I had a long rant about human malware. And JG, yeah, no, like I totally want to do. I've wanted to do zebras the whole time. Like it's just a matter of affording them. The new job makes it possible to afford them. Old job did not. Like, just one of the things. My dog barking his brains out in the background. I hope you guys don't actually hear that on the mic, but you might. I'm not sure. Okay, I have one more question that I'm gonna throw on the from the community tab that I want to answer. So let's put that up. It's more of a talking. It's more of a topic type thing. So from Mr. Fish Sir, which I love that name. I think it's. I don't know why it is both funny and enjoyable to me to have Mr. and Sir in the same name, but I like it. He's had lots of cool questions and done lots of cool comments on video, so really appreciate it. So, hi Bentley, maybe talk about what water parameters to keep for a planted tank, like nitrates, and what to do with plants that show deficiencies. I figured out my banana plant, so he'd had some banana plant issues, just needed another root tab. So, the base, how do I put this? The basic things for planted tanks is most plants prefer softer water, so they're going to want to be in that like 6.5 to 7.0, and some will do 7.2 and 7.4 without issue. Like that's not hard, but they really don't want to go above like 8 pH, and they don't want to be in super hard water. It's really mineral rich. Certain plants can, but for a majority, your plants want softer water. As far as nitrates are concerned, if you can consistently have your tank sitting between 5 and 20 ppm nitrates. Typically, you want that 10 to 20 is like your golden range, if you will. If you can get them consistently sitting at that, you're pretty good. Like if you test on any given day other than the day you dose ferts, and it's like 10 to 20 nitrates, you're doing really, really good on the ppm. Most plants don't like a ton of flow, but some can do very well in flow. So it's kind of addressing what kind of flow you want. Because to me, flow is a water parameter. Just to be specific, there are lots of plants that have issues in very low flow. And there are lots of plants that have issues in high flow. So that's why I look at water flow as a parameter when it comes to plants. And then beyond that, you don't want ammonia, you don't want nitrites. That's just a healthy thing. They're naturally going to suck that up anyway. And then beyond that, I would look at, if you can, instead of like that once a week fertilizer mentality, spread your fertilizer out. So let's say you have a 40-gallon tank. 40 breeder, right? Probably my favorite tank. And you're going to do Aquarium Co-op Easy Green or any of the once a week. Just Co-op's the one I happen to use, although I've lately been using Brightwell stuff and quite like it. It's quite nice. And it's like 1 pump per 10 gallons once a week. That's your low light, simple. Or twice a week if it's medium or very densely planted. What I would do instead, let's say that I've got a densely planted, but no CO2, medium light tank. So I'm supposed to dose 8 total pumps a week, 2 doses of 4. I would instead dose 1 pump every day, so that I have a consistent nutrient in my water instead of a big burst of nutrients, then suck them all up. Then a big burst, then suck them all up. I would just have this continual, slow, low dose. And then as I get really dense plant growth, maybe it's right before I need to trim, maybe I'm 1 pump, 2 pumps. 1 pump, 2 pumps, just alternating to make sure that you have a good nutrient load and you're not seeing deficiencies or issues in the plants. Now, as far as deficiencies, it usually means you need to dose something. And I would just always consult, there's just, if you literally look up aquarium plant deficiency guide, you'll find this wonderful picture that's out there. It helps you identify things so fast. Bookmark it, keep the picture, print it out, put it on your wall, whatever you need to do. That thing is your best friend until you get to a point of where you memorize what all those things look like. And I can get a link, unless Candy beats me to it. Because she might. She's so fast. But not today. It's like, here's an example of one. Oh, that's terrible. That image is so tiny. Hold on. I'm trying to open just the image in its own tab rather than some of these long articles that suck. Well, not helping me much, Google. Okay. As it creates... This is the longest link I've ever seen in my life. There's literally 13,000 characters for this image link. It'll take me forever. Oh boy. Ah, good. Candy's in 2 streams. She's slow. It's alright. I'll pull this up. I got this one. Yeah, very often little holes tends to be a potassium issue, but not always potassium. Potassium usually is a yellowing or rung along the veins. So here, this is I think one of the better guides out there. Usually pinholes, and there's other stuff. So pinholes also can be boron. There are more detailed versions of this. Holy moly, I can hear a dog barking their brains out. But that's your best friend. That little guide has an image. There are other versions of it. Like I said, just like an aquarium plant deficiency guide. And you'll be doing fantastic. And I'll have stuff like this available once the aquatic horticulture program is online. There will be things like this available. And you might even have some video guides long term. If I have to like cause them so I can show them to you is the big problem. I don't like causing deficiencies in my plants if I can, but we can make it happen. So yeah, there is that. That's going to be your best friend that answers that question, I hope. Do we have any other questions in chat? Like, we still have an hour basically to fly through. Otherwise, I want to talk about some weird project stuff. Other than poor Sean coming in after I answer his question. Okay, so we're going to talk about a couple things until questions show up. Number one, if you were either on Patreon or a member, you saw a little spoiler, and I'm gonna very quickly give you a spoiler here on stream. You ready? It's gonna be fast. You ready? Did you see it? Did you see it, chat? Did you see it? Chat's behind, so I gotta wait. I'm gonna talk about one of my other projects, and then we'll see who saw it. So I've been doing a lot of stuff with Brightwell. Thankfully, Brightwell gave me a whole bunch of stuff to try out. It's not a sponsorship, because sponsorship, I think technically the rules for sponsorship is they actually pay you, which they're not, but they gave me a ton of product to try. So a couple of the products I'm working with right now, there's the Rainbow Code, which is basically a vitamin and mineral supplement designed to be best suited for rainbow fish tanks, which is really good when you live in Seattle and you have very soft water that has nothing in it. I'm working with another product I call Razor, which is designed to help deal with like glass algae and deal with algae issues inside the tank. So that, yeah, I mean, if you're on Patreon and stuff, you already know, but that's a newer picture than I've put out anywhere. That was a picture from this morning. And then I have, there's the Shrimp Code 2, which I've been working with. It's very similar. It's other than the Vitamerin F, which is the vitamin supplement, it's just kind of it's not a GHKH booster like salty shrimp, but it's another kind of just thing that is for buffering the water to make the shrimp healthier overall. I kind of want to see side by side the Vitamerin versus the Code in two different tanks. So it's one of those things that I have been kind of playing with. I'm starting to work on those things, but yeah, that's some of the stuff I'm working with. They also have their fertilizer line, which I'm using in one tank right now. I've been in really good contact with Brightwell. They've been answering lots of questions, which has been great. I'm still working with the JCNP light to finish testing on that and its final review. And I need to reach out to the JCNP folks to see if they're still willing to give me the 28-inch light. And we'll try that one too. Why not? Why not? Yeah, there's a lot of people who live, Brian, that were like crazy hard water. And I do feel kind of blessed that there's like nothing in my water, so I can make it whatever I want. But I would almost, how to put this, because I'm a rainbow fish person, I'd almost prefer that slightly harder water, because then I don't have to like buffer it and do all this nonsense to make rainbows happy. I would just pour water out of the tap or out of the well or whatever, and they'd be fine. But, you know, it's nice for drinking. That super clean, nothing in it water tastes better. So those are some of the projects. Now the other stuff, of course, Animal House. I'm trying to get that done. That requires a friend to be able to come out of his quarantine. That's for I've made a spoiler about it. I'll just say that's Alex Williamson. So Secret History. He's actually gone out and like handpicked a bunch of rock that we're gonna use in the tank, and we're gonna scape the thing together. So I have a bunch of manzanita that's on my front porch in boxes, and he's bringing a bunch of rock so that we can scape Animal House. And I've got this really cool idea in my head, and hopefully it translates well to Fish Tank. But I kind of want to do, I think an homage is the right word, to the lake and stream rainbow fish environments that are out in the wild in New Guinea. And there's some gussing up of it, but that's kind of like the initial mental thought and the what we're trying to accomplish in an aquascape. And this will actually be like an aquascaped tank, which normally I don't do, but not too crazy, because I don't want to like have green aqua levels of maintenance on a tank. So once this whole coronavirus thing calms down and he's he deals with his own health issues that make it really, really scary for him. So I totally am just being like, dude, yeah, hide, fine, just hide, hide and be safe. Yeah. So that's like a lot of stuff on the plate. The other thing is getting testing lab together has been horrible because I basically need assistance from my cousin to pick up and move fish tanks. And yeah, we're both on like, quarantine orders basically because human malware. It sucks that this like dominates the conversation of everything out there, but here's that. So question in chat from Ginger Graves, other than Preston John. Hello. The puffer god has joined us. What substrate would you use if you wanted to get pH lower for wild bettas? My pH runs neutralish at the moment. I use tannins already. So the big thing I would do is use probably ADA. There are a couple other like Tropica's soil if you can find it, but ADA has the most acidic buffering capacity. Fluval's kind of like right behind it, but ADA buffers down the most. Holy GH180 KH40. Woo! You might have to, Ginger, you might have to look into like a, not RODI, but you could just do the DI side. Or like a carbon block filter before getting water into your tank to help pull a lot of that stuff out. Because that much general hardness is going to hold your pH a lot, and the substrate will only buffer down so much for so long when it's dealing with that water consistently. Where if you use like a carbon block filter and you yank most of that stuff out, it becomes a lot easier. You don't necessarily have to have full RODI in order to get your water down quite a bit, but RODI just like brings it down to like 10 TDS. It brings it down to like Seattle water. But yeah, ADA is probably the best. It's really expensive though. I would just use Fluval. It's very similar for significantly cheaper. And if you can find Tropica, I don't quite know Brightwell's buffering capacity. I haven't asked that of the Brightwell folks yet, just because I haven't been playing with it. I kind of wanted to just experience it for myself without asking too many questions, which in testing lab, they sent me a ton of substrate to be the substrate for all the testing lab tanks. So we'll get some real hands-on experience with Brightwell stuff here very, very soon as far as their substrate, which most of the substrates are all very, very similar. The only difference is Brightwell doesn't initially have the ammonia kickoff that like ADA and Fluval does. Fluval to much less extent, but there's not as many additional organics in the soil that cause that ammonia spike. like 88 does. 88 does that a ton, which is usually how they kickstart their tanks, right? But yeah. Okay, so for those who missed, we're gonna get one more spoiler. Remember, watch the corner where the rainbow tank is. Up here. Ready? 3, 2, 1. Just remember, we got this guy. Now there are more. So yeah. Hopefully that helps. Okay, now I'll stop messing around. I'll stop doing spoilers. I'll leave it up. So right before human malware hit pretty hard here in Washington, I got an opportunity to go to an adoption event, and they had these two out of a litter of like 10 girls, and they're Corgi Shiba Inu mixes that got rescued from Korea. So yeah, they show a lot of Shiba Inu. If you just look at them, they look like tricolor Shiba Inus, but their mom is a full like tricolor Pembroke Corgi. So there's little bits like the smaller. Both these are spayed, by the way, so I won't be having puppies or anything. And if I was going to do that, I might stud my boy out because he's a full bred Pembroke Corgi, and I would only do that for another Pembroke Corgi. But I don't plan on like getting a female Pembroke and like breeding puppies, or I don't want that nonsense. Just kind of wanted to, wanted some playmates for Papalimo is basically what it came down to, and the heartstrings got tugged real hard on a weekend where I was like, I got a new job, I got a better income, let's do it. But they're good little dogs. The bigger of the two girls, so I have the runt of the litter, and I have like the biggest of the litter in the girls, and it's so funny the differences between this, because like the runt of the litter loves human contact. She's like constantly begging to be pet, wants to be like held, and it's very sweet. And she shows more corgi. She's a little like longer in the body and not quite as tall in the legs, where her sister is much more like looks like a Shiba Inu, like because she's much taller in the legs. She's got a lot more like Shiba quality in her build, but she's kind of stout like a corgi. So you can see where the corgi is, because it's a little stouter body than a Shiba is normally going to have. Especially like in the neck area. But yeah, so we got an opportunity. They're pretty dogs. They're very sweet. They're not used to playing with puppy toys, which has been very funny, because anything that makes a squeaky noise, they go hog wild over. It's been last few nights I've been letting them like play in my downstairs. So we spend a lot of time with them apart, because we want them. First, wanted to get the girls used to the house, used to us, know that they're safe, know that they're okay, and then slowly introduce Papalimo, so that they know, like, hey, he lives here, even though we've, like, kind of sequestered him away, because there was a lot of fighting the first few days when we had them kind of in a playpen, and then him outside in his own kind of zone. They would, like, fight at the gate a lot, and that's natural. Puppies are getting used to each other. So we moved him to my office, and he's basically like had my entire office except for like the table legs for my two desks as his like play zone. While they got a little more settled in, and then we slowly introduced them more and more, in order to get them used to each other. And now this week basically, every night they go downstairs for like 2.5 to 3 hours, and we just let them run hog wild around like the living room and the kitchen area, because it's all kind of open one area, and you know, I just sit down there and like put something on Netflix as background noise and just watch the puppies play. And they've been introducing them to toys, which the two girls, because they came in such a big litter, they've never had toys. And they're like 3 months now, I think. And so it's been very funny watching like Papa Limo, who's really used to toys, and these two girls who have like never had toys until they came to this house. And they like at first they were super fighty over toys, like they didn't want to give them up to anybody. And then they started to realize like, oh, there's like they're everywhere, because they bought a little pack on Amazon. It's like 20 toys for $13 or something stupid like that, right? And it's like just little plushy squeaky toys. Now they're like the one girl's still a little, the older the bigger sister is still a little like toy hoggy, but other than that, like they just be dogs and bark at each other and play a lot. So there you go. That's like the other new thing in my house. That's the other thing keeping me really busy is just like there's 3 dogs instead of 1. But for the most part, I can just let them play. Like they're all in my office right now. So if you do hear barks in the background, that's why. Because they're all in there barking at each other and playing. But it'd be fun. Like eventually we'll get them a little older. Maybe eventually we get them calmer on camera. Like Papa Limo is super calm now. I can just hold him and he just like stays put. It's really great. And we got to get the girls to that point. And we start getting them on camera. It'd be fun. So, let's see if we got any other questions in here. From Leonard Klein. So, 8.3 pH and 180 hardness. That's actually not that bad. So, there's 2 ways, Leonard, that you can look at addressing. One, you can try not to fight your water. And look for plants that do well in hard water. So Anubias, bulbinus, certain species of val. These can all do very, very well. Java ferns can too. Or you can add humic substances, aka tannins, so like leaf litter and stuff like that, especially if you add it in like your filter, to help buffer that pH down a little bit. Finally, the last thing you can do is look at a like carbon block filter or a deionizing filter. I would just do a carbon block, like a whole house filter. You know how they do those big carbon block filters you can buy at the Home Depot and stuff like that. Run your water through that. That's going to pull a lot of those minerals and stuff out of your water, and it's going to get you fairly close to something a little more reasonable, a little more neutral, and you can work from there. And the only thing you have to do is change out a carbon block filter like once every 6 months. It depends on how much water you put through it. Just do the math on how many gallons it handles and all that kind of stuff. It's pretty easy. But that's one of the ones I'd look at. Sorry, I can hear the dogs like barking like crazy. I hope that doesn't come out through too bad on the mic because they're like all the way down the hall in a different room. But they're dogs and they're loud. They're playing with each other. One is really barky. She just barks when she plays, which if you have a headache is very annoying, but otherwise it's kind of cute. Cannot grow Java fern to save your life. We're going to find a way to fix that. There's got to be a way. Well, yeah, so Kay, to be fair, we probably wouldn't have adopted the puppies had we not been like looking at the horizon and going like, we might be stuck in the house soon for weeks or maybe a month. That gives us lots of time to like get the puppies adjusted and stuff like that. It's actually like we basically planned on adopting them based on the knowledge that I could be locked in the house with my lady and thus could be there to help. And some of the things I was doing in my work schedule made it so that I basically would like come home, immediately play with the dogs for quite a while, and split between. So like I'd play with the girls for a bit here, and then I'd go and I'd play with Papa Limo in the other room. And I'd spend like an hour and a half just sitting with him playing the whole time to give him lots of attention because he's a corgi. They need attention. They're attention dogs, and we want him not to feel like he's being punished or anything like that while the girls get adjusted. Which for those who care, I'll put their names in chat so that you can see the spellings. But the girls, the runt of the litter is named Shantoto, and the bigger girl is named Lulu. And those are characters out of Final Fantasy, which is what Papa Limo's name comes from. It's a character out of Final Fantasy. They are all from different games, but they're some of like my girlfriend and I's favorite characters in the Final Fantasy series. So they're all the same job in Final Fantasy, which is a black mage, so like fire magic and stuff like that. We kind of had a theme when we picked names because we're weird nerds. But yeah, you gotta make when you have situations like this. Like I think one of the other best things about being an aquarist is that this time is some of the best time to just sit and enjoy your fish. Because like if they're gonna force you to be home, why not spend that time like watching your fish really close, like really getting a feel for how they act and understanding them, so that when you go by and when you have less time again, and you're doing that week where it's like, man, there's only a week where I really only got to see my fish while I fed them. But you could start scanning and looking at your fish because you'll know their behavior so much better when you're like locked away in your house and you just watch them for like an hour or two at a time to like prevent from going insane, right? You get used to that behavior and you watch them, and then you'll be able to spot like off behavior really, really quickly. Like these fish never just sit at the top of the water. Why is that one fish sitting at the top of the water the whole time, kind of swimming idly away from everybody else? What's going on, right? It's a good opportunity to really learn your fish behavior. If you don't already know it. If you already know it, well, you can just enjoy your fish instead. Don't go too crazy. Don't be looking for reasons to medicate a tank or something, but maybe take a little time, clean that tank a little extra, service your filters, all that kind of stuff. Great time for that right now, especially for those of us who are in like stay in place or shelter in place or stay safe, or I don't know. Well, you call it whatever whatever you want to just this break of normal life where we get to be paranoid and crazy all at the same time. But yeah, I mean, like you get to learn fish personalities and all that stuff. It's kind of great. It's you can also play with new things, like maybe try a new food you never tried before off the internet or something. Why not? I wish I had more room for breeding projects because this would be the best time to do it. As Brian's kind of bringing up, like I just need tank space. I need my house not to be wired like horrifically bad, because the way that it's wired makes it impossible to put tanks on a lot of the circuits, because I'm already like pushing the limit on the circuits where most of my tanks are. It's like, even though I have space in other rooms where I could put more tanks up and I could put up like another stand, the the power, the way it's wired in my house is so terrible. So that's the other reason why I want to do the garage. I want to get the garage done and wired so that everything's nice, and then I can get all my fish into one room that's nice and heated. It's got auto water changes and all the power's nice and done, and then rewire the rest of the stupid house so that it's not wired like some crazy person did it. Okay, so yeah, it's supposed to lower. I haven't to Ginger. I haven't asked like directly to them like how well it buffers and what it can and can't handle based on TDS and water and stuff like that. But if it buffers, it buffers. And they're all pretty the same. Most of those like clay ball style substrates are all going to do roughly the same thing. There's just some small differences in them based on what organic compounds they have mixed in. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, Candy's still working from home. Well, Candy, you do you. You keep working hard. But yeah, I've spent the last day or so working from home because there's some of the issues. How do I put this? I have in my job, I work on development hardware. So this is not like a product that's out in the wild yet. This is stuff that's being created for, I think, end of this year is the target. Maybe it's next year. I'm not really sure. That's not information I'm privy to, but just guessing on what I've been told and what our schedules are, I would assume that's kind of what the shoot for is. So I work on, stuff that's really early, and which means that typically there's lots of issues because parts of the hardware aren't fully set up and those things. So part of what I do can't be done from home. But while we're waiting on some of those issues to get resolved, and while a lot of people are kind of forced out, we can do some other things. We can do some prep work. So like my eventual job is that me and the other person I work with will lead a team of, I think it's like 13 to 15 testers. So, roughly 7 testers per lead, basically put. And then we'll be doing quite a lot of work. So what we're in now is like we have this kind of slow time to get the calm before the storm, so to speak, and then we'll be moving really fast. It's like breakneck pace, and I'll probably be working a ton when that happens. But that's the exciting part. Like that's the part I'm really excited for because that's the fun part, to me at least. Like those hours won't matter because it'll be fun. And also, overtime money's pretty good too. So Brian, yeah, sure. Let me quick talk about that. So whenever I can do my garage, which we need human malware to go away, and then we need we need to get all of the family storage stuff that is in my garage right now out and moved, and that's part of why I need human malware to go. Is like I was in the process of scheduling all that stuff to get out of my home, and like get a storage unit set up for my mom. Because a lot of it's my mom's stuff, and at her place, like get her like basically a storage shed, and get all the stuff moved out there and into the shed. Well, human malware's kind of ruined all that, so we have to do that so we can get stuff out to make space, and then I have to have a contractor come over, which hopefully I can use a friend and do it with a fellow aquarist. And what we'll do is there's lots of room in my power box already, so we can dedicate, I think it's like 6 circuits just to my garage. There's quite a lot, but more than enough power because we'll heat the room and we'll do dehumidifiers for the whole room to make it nice and simple so it doesn't get too humid. It stays nice and warm. So how do I deal with filming, but keep it efficient? So part of that is the water system. I've been talking with Dean and a couple other friends discussing the difference between a continuous drip system or like your auto water change where it's like it pours in a certain amount and overflows and all that. I'm really tempted to do continuous drip just because I like that system, but I've had some cautions from Dean about it just because he's encountered some clogging and stuff like that every once in a while, and there's only so often you want that to happen. Thankfully, our water is so soft it makes it a lot easier, but there's not a lot of like mineral deposits that are going to happen and things like that. Hopefully that should help. So then how we make it filmable is we work at getting the walls basically all black and treated for sound. So very similar to what Zenzo did, which is what I was planning, is just acoustic blanketing all over the place and some sound paneling up in the ceiling to help absorb a lot of the excess noise. Most of that fish room is going to run on air, except for a certain number of display tanks. So there will be, it's either 6 or 8. We have to do the math when we have everything empty and see how things sit. Because we're literally going to like put tape on the floor to see how things look and determine space and make sure that it's easy to film, but as efficient as I can make it. So I want space. I don't want to be like jammed with, this much room between tanks. I want space in my garage. So it's not going to be hyper efficient. It's not going to be like the maximum breeding capacity possible, but it will have basically an entire wall dedicated to raising fish, which in a 540 square foot room, that's a good size. And then in the center is going to be a bunch of display tanks. All of those will be, the current plan is probably 150 gallon custom acrylics. So it would be 6 or 8 of them. So basically back to back, 4 or 3 long. That are all custom acrylic, mostly single species, and letting them do their thing. And then there will be some space for some kind of bigger grow out pond type stuff. The test lab will be in a specific spot in there, and we'll have the specific area for that. But part of what we do is by blacking out all the walls, you reduce a lot of the reflective light. It makes it easier to deal with glare. I'm not going to put 3D backgrounds in every tank. I know, like, Corey just talked about that, and Dean's talked about it for glare. No thanks. Like, there are other ways to deal with glare that don't require that, and that are really cheap. And I'm not a really big fan of 3D backgrounds. I think they're horrifically inefficient. But if you have an 800-gallon tank, you can do something really cool. So, you know, hey. Like, and I would like to eventually have, like, a big tank. Like, you know, a 300 or 400-gallon tank. But I don't know that that's possible. And still, like, doing the other goals of that place. So there's that. That is, like, the goal. Most of the tanks will be either 40-gallon breeders as far as grow-outs and breeding tanks are concerned, or will be some number of 10s and 20 longs probably. Might be 20 talls. It'll depend on how we can math out making the most efficient use of the space. But the goal is basically to have a really good armada of tanks for raising fish, some really good dedicated plant spaces, some nicer display tanks, and then the testing lab and space to film. And there's some other, like, kind of secrets that I'm not going to talk about that we're building into the fish room. That I've some conversations with Joel, for example, who's the contractor I kind of want to use, but it's just a matter of time. As long as things line up at his schedule and we can do it in the right pace, that will matter. And there's some other things, like we've talked, and he was just like, hey, there might be things where it's smarter to get a dedicated contractor to do that one thing over me, because it might be cheaper or it might be faster, or a bunch of different reasons, right? So we'll get it all bid out and figured out. But yeah, I know the 300 or 400-gallon would be rainbows. Come on, Sean, you know better. And then, like, there's some other not the big display tanks, but other display tanks in my head. So, like, I want one tank for saltwater and one dedicated Shelly tank, and those are designed slightly different, so they won't fit in that, like, row of 150s, but they'll be there. There's to be display tanks. So it just kind of depends on how much space we have, whether it's 6 or 8 long term, and then a couple other ones that will be like a dedicated Shelly tank and a dedicated saltwater eventually. So yeah, the guppies will get a new guppy mansion, and then there will also be a couple smaller tanks with kind of very carefully hand selected guppies to breed out more, in order to try and speed up the rate at which we get babies instead of being in the giant tank. And yeah, I'm gonna film the bejesus out of this thing. So every part of the builds will be filmed. We'll go over it in as much detail as I can. And granted, some of that work's gonna get done while I'm at work, so I can't do perfect. But I'm going to make sure that there's as much detail on the build out, why we made the decision we made. Yes, like, basically every tank will have a black background and probably black sides as well, so you'll have a single face that you see through on the tank. That just helps make it a little easier for the purposes of doing that. For breeding purposes, it's a lot better. And for some of the plant tanks, it's a lot easier to shield light around and do some stuff like that, and make some certain adjustments, if you will. There are some Coreys I'd like to breed. I don't know that I'll try to dedicatedly breed Coreys. It might be one of those things where I'll have a tank that's a non, like, rainbow fish, or eventually some plecos. Certain plecos are getting bred. There's just ones that I really, really, really want to do. But yeah. Fungus mold inhibitors in the paint. Yeah, so, you don't need that if you use the right stuff. You don't necessarily have to paint, is what I'm trying to say. Also, if you have a really good dehumidifier, you don't worry about that. We might use an air exchanger just because they're more efficient, but they're more expensive too, to be fair. They're a couple $1,000s versus like a $200 dehumidifier. but they maintain your air temperature and your humidity far, far better. So yeah, there's that. When will I start? Brett asking this. Depends on human malware. So there's a lot of things being held up. Number one, I have to get the aquatic program done first. So that has a far higher priority. Once I can, the kind of quarantine, if you will, levels of people being in their stay safe, stay home thing in Washington State go away, I can work on getting the storage unit for my mother put up and then getting stuff out of my garage. Once stuff is out of my garage, I can start doing the initial planning phases, and that's a lot of like taping things out, working with contractors, figuring out how much plumbing work I have to do, how much electrical I have to do. Do I need to get my regular water heater removed and turned into a tankless? All those things. There's a lot of stuff. But the very early planning stuff has been done because I had some early conversations when I was trying to like budget things and figure out what the budget would have to be. And that's the other thing. You got to be able to afford it all. So I got to like have a few months at the new job and rat hole some cash and things like that. But yeah, so aquatic horticulture program first. My goal would be to start like seriously looking at construction toward I do this in quotations because I don't know how long human malware is going to affect everyone, September or October, because that's about what it will take. So current timelines of things is, oh sweet, Brett, that's good to know. I actually will probably need an electrician, but we'll see. I might be able to have my uncle come over and help, because there's only so much I have to do. I have open space in my box, but we'll see. It might be there's a myriad of reasons to do a lot of different things, and talking to an electrician who is also an aquarist might help. So I'll keep that in mind. So current goal is to have the online horticulture program available to the public. So it'll go online first in a small test with a few people to just kind of like monkey with the system and make sure it works from a lot of different locations just to be safe. And then I'll probably wipe out almost all that data and we'll launch it in July, hopefully. If human malware pushes way, way longer than most of us are hoping, it could potentially delay, but the goal is to not have that delay this project. It would, in theory, only delay doing like my garage. So that basically it's kind of like get that done in July, use August to make sure that the garage is emptied out of all of its stuff and pre-plan. And then when we get into September or October, depending on how schedules work, can then probably actually start construction and start getting stuff done. That being said, there is a lot that has to be done, a lot going on in this world, and I kind of just have to roll with punches right now. Okay, no, so for the people who are going to help me test, I actually just have some specific people in mind. They're just people that I've talked to for a while who, whether they are professional software individuals and or just some local plant gurus that I'm going to work with just to give me some feedback. I have a couple people. I probably need a UK tester, so that might help. I might have to talk that, but yeah. But yeah, it's one of those things that I've got a few people done. We'll get somebody out in Australia or New Zealand, just kind of all over the place, make sure that things work in most of the major places it works. And then those people would basically just be there like, hey, I'm just going to have you submit a plant and a picture, and then we're gonna do that a couple of times, and we're gonna just like, you could put any picture up. Your test image could just be like a picture of like, I don't know, a dog or something. It could be a picture of Papalimo for all I care, but we're just gonna test the mechanisms to make sure that they work, and then as long as everything works correctly and we're not seeing any major issues in that that testing, right? And the way it's designed, the likelihood of issues is really low. Then as long as everything is smooth through end of June, very early July, at some point in July, it will get launched to some level of fanfare, I hope. I hope that I can make this program really usable for a lot of people. And I've said this in some interviews recently. If this has to get handed off, so like, let's say I get too busy to process things, I need to hand it off to someone else to run, I will do so. It's not about like, the goal is not to have, that's my thing. The goal is to give a resource to this hobby that doesn't currently exist. And I'd like long term for there to be like a master breeder certification, maybe even going into the saltwater world and having like a coral certification. I would love to do that long term. I would love to see like some kind of aquascaping certification. I don't know how you would do that, right? But I think it would be cool if lots of the parts of this hobby, we could get experts to create programs and make them possible long term through this. Because the website is not like online horticulture program. It's got grander ideas in mind. Yeah, so Alex is part of helping me. Definitely. We haven't talked much in the last few weeks because he's in like hyper quarantine, but yeah, no, Alex is definitely one of the people we've been chatting about it. He'll be one of the people helping me test, just kind of putting some things in there. Basically the whole design process is my brain. It's, I don't have, other than the people helping me create the software to make it run. It's all, I'm the lone aquarist designing this. Although I've had some conversations with, like Randy Reed, for example. I've had some conversations with Joel Sokorvasoskin, just kind of like bouncing some really base level ideas off of them and seeing what they thought as an initial process. Most of what I've done is like compare the biggest online programs that are out there. So MASI, the Minnesota Aquarium Society, is it Sacramento Aquarium Society, or is it San Diego? One of the California ones that has a pretty good horticulture program. And then GSAS, as far as US. If somebody knows, or like, if you have a really good club somewhere else in the world that has a great horticulture program, please, please, please shoot me an email, bentley.pasco@gmail.com. I would love to just give me a link to that program. If they have an FAQ about their program, or just here's how our program works, I'd love to be able to look at that, because anything else that I can add would help. So yeah, and that's the part. Zen Ginger, you're kind of talking about that. Like, aquascaping is one of the hard parts. Horticulture projects are very easy. So understanding how plants work and like a master aquatic horticulture certification is very simple. Can you grow plants? Can you propagate plants? Can you keep plants alive? And can you eventually flower plants? That's all you really need to know to master plants. Now, as far as the aquascaping and like gardening side of things, let's call it aquatic gardening, that is very subjective. That is, growing plants is objective, but the gardening and creating aquascapes, that is very subjective. So that's why it's like the most niche, very far out there version. But what I would look at is something like this. We understand that there are certain basics, if you will, to aquascaping fundamentals, like certain layouts, designs, how you put hardscape together. These are like the fundamentals, not the long-term like competition nonsense, but the fundamentals of aquascaping. So is there a way to create a program that allows people to learn and effectively get some kind of recognition, certification, call it what you will, that they have learned those concepts and understand those concepts and can demonstrate the application of those concepts? Because the second you do that, right, you could feasibly create something in the aquascaping world. At first, we're not even looking at aquascaping. We're just looking at, can you grow, propagate, and flower plants? That's horticulture. Easy. You guys have seen my tags. I don't aquascape anything. I just put plants in place and let them grow and do their thing. It's way easier that way. But long term, this is why I say it's kind of the lofty side of the goal. The lofty side of the goal is, how far could we expand those kind of certifications, recognitions, whatever? Because it might be that the breeding and coral programs and horticulture programs all have certifications, but other programs, whether it's levels of aquascaping or what have you, could be more of like recognitions. I'm not sure. That's not even something that's going to happen this year. Right? Horticulture program first. Then the second one would be looking at like a master breeder certification for freshwater. Because I know freshwater breeders who are master breeders of various fish, and I can bring their knowledge and their wisdom. I can ask them questions about how to build a program and design it and put it together. That I can do. But I'm not really an aquascaper, and there is a lot of subjective stuff. So that would not be something I would look at very early. And just like going into the saltwater side, like coral, probably not until a year or two from now. The goal is to have a base idea with lofty goals and designing software that can execute the base idea very, very well, but can also be set up in a way that long term it can handle the lofty goals too. That's part of the design process on the software side for us and for me and the guys I'm working with. So that's the thing. Those are some of the stuff that we're looking at, we're trying to make it work. And I'm pretty confident I can. But it will take time. But I would love to do more than just the horticulture program long term, because there are lots of people who don't have clubs who want to be a master breeder or a master horticulturalist or what have you. And if you don't have a local club that gives you that, why not have an online program that does? Why not have an online club? Why be restricted in this age with the level of technology we have? Why be restricted by your location? No one seems to want to serve that purpose yet, so I'm going to try. That's my goal. That's how I want to contribute to this hobby. So, or at least that might be the best way that I can contribute to this hobby. Other than, of course, trying to put tiny YouTube videos out and teach people how to do stuff while I ramble about stuff. I get a kick out of it. I can't help it. So yeah, I hope that answers most of the questions. I think we've covered that pretty thorough. Between several of the projects that are in the pipeline being worked on, videos coming up, dealing with human malware. It's a lot of stuff. And which I got the human, for those asking, I got the human malware from a tech channel that I watch. It's called Gamers Nexus. They do really, really in-depth reviews of computer hardware. And it's very fun every time they reference it as human malware for me to just get a giggle. So I've just kind of adopted it because it's funny to me. And I work in the tech industry anyway. So, yeah, a couple reminders. Like last second reminders. We're pretty close to end of stream here. For those who are dealing with some kind of hard times, for those who are here, if you weren't here earlier in the stream, maybe you are furloughed, got laid off, just dealing with your kids being home from school, and that's kind of messing with your schedule, uh, going slowly crazy, working from home, whatever that may be. If you have a certain level of hardship, the video game that I worked on, Bots and the Robo Friends, they're the development studio that created that game, Grotto Softworks, is doing a wonderful giveaway where they're giving away 100 total copies of the game to help folks in need during this kind of extraordinary time in the world, really, the world at this point. But you have an opportunity, if you're under certain levels of hardship, to get a free copy of the game on Steam. If you have that, maybe you just want a game to play with your kids. That's what this game is kind of designed to do. Or maybe you lost your job, you need something to cheer you up. Maybe you're not getting, you work in some kind of delivery service that got screwed. You just need something to feel a little better. It's an opportunity. Candy, thank you so much again for linking those. There's their Instagram. I think they have one on their Twitter too, but the Instagram's a good one just for the giveaway. Let them know I sent you. And really the only thing is if you do get a copy of the game, you don't have to tell me anything, but just please leave a review for the game on Steam. Just, and be honest. You don't have to fluff it up. Just let them know, because they're a small studio. They really want to be able to do more than just the one game. And also they will be adding DLC and improvement to the game that is all free. So they won't be charging people for some of the extra plans that are a little down the line to improve bots long term before they go and try to work on their next game. But yeah. So check that out if you get an opportunity. And if you do qualify for one of those hardships, like maybe check out the game, have a little fun. You'll get to hear my voice be all sorts of weird. I'm trying to get a lot of stuff running schedules and new work has made my member content of doing some of the showing how I did some of the work in the game and like audio processing and stuff like that has made that way harder than I want to. Also, 2 little dogs that bark a lot has it's made that hard, but they're worth it. They're cute. They're getting better too. So yeah, no horse armor DLC. Oh jeez. Yeah, no, they specifically have said that their intent is the DLC that is planned on their schedule will be free. And if they ever had a demand to make more content, they would probably just make another game, is really what it come down to. Rather than make a DLC for the same game, they would just go and make the next game that they have planned. And they have some really cool ideas. And if things go well, I'll be part of those really cool ideas because they really appreciated my help and I had a lot of fun. So it'll be cool. Yeah, so lots of projects, little PSA again there on Bots and the Robo Friends, which features my voice and my work. But not my normal speaking voice. So I play 2 villains, Brutus and Hacker. And like, I'll give you descriptions, but I won't do the voices because I want you guys to hear them in game before you hear me do them. So you have Hacker, which is kind of like, the way I would describe him is if you had, this might be a little weird for people because I'm very much a child of the 80s. If you took Cobra Commander from G.I. Joe and then turned him into a Decepticon, that's Hacker. That was like the mental processing for his voice and the work that I did. And then there's Brutus, which is basically if the Macho Man Randy Savage was a villain. This is like very much kind of a wrestler, like that the wrestler, super ultra machismo bravado kind of mentality, and also a little bit of Mr. Satan for those that watch like Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z. It's a little inspired by that, but those are the 2 villains. And then there's a really small, what's called a Robo Friend. They're like things that you pick up and they give you augmentations. There's one in there called Fab, and that's my voice. And instead of like inspiration, I will just give you like the cue card. So they have very few lines, the Robo Friends, because they're small characters. They don't have a lot of voice. But the cue card would give you ideas like, oh, they're bright and peppy and blah, blah, blah. Fab literally just said drag queen. So if you can think of me try to ham it up as a drag queen vocally, And there's some certain lines in there that are great. And I had a ludicrous amount of fun doing that particular very short character, and then later going through and reprocessing it and laughing at myself making that voice. But yeah, so for those who do play games and you check it out, like just listen to those characters. Those are all my voices. I'd love to know what you think. And leave a review for the game, please. Honest, and like you don't have to be like nice because you know me. Like, hey man, you know, like if you thought it sucked, tell them it sucked. Tell them what you would think could be done better, because that's the other thing. They really pay attention to feedback. They try to fix things where they can. We had a lot of people that we know and play video games with who were basically our test staff and would give us like, hey, this part felt really fun, but this kind of sucks. This felt really fun, but this wasn't very good. And they made adjustments, which is why the game got delayed. They made some adjustments to address that and try to make the game better. So, just little look into my life. All right, guys. Yeah, normal Tuesday. Thanks, Sean. Jeez. So with that being said, we're at 2 hours. I don't see any other like major questions in chat, so we will end it on this. And then DS, yeah, I'll check your email shortly. I've been running like a crazy person the last few days. So let me just put this out there, guys. Be safe. Wash your hands. Use sanitizer. Practice social distancing. Don't get human malware. All the usual stuff. Stay safe. Stay healthy. Thank you guys so much for watching. And as always, stay awesome. Yeah, no, my game is definitely not EA. Y'all have a good one. Enjoy your weekend. Just, don't go too crazy at home like I'm going to.